Uh, it's like visiting home. It's like going home after you've not been there for a very long time. God, I love this game. So Nintendo did this funny little thing and released Pokemon Red Rescue Team on the emulation system they have on the Nintendo Switch. And I, an opportunist, looked at that and went, oh boy, I can talk about Mystery Dungeon! I feel like Pokemon is a very wide medium, or collection of mediums, all of which do not equate with each other unless they explicitly say they do. And even then, it's so loose most times, it's just sort of used as a cameo hook for people who played the previous game, or watched a movie or something. There's different ways to get into the franchise, and that's partially why I think they earned their spot as the #1 franchise in the world, worming their way into people's joyful subconscious by simply existing, with many avenues and appealing to different people. It took me a moment to warm up to Pokemon, because I was an odd neurodivergent bunny who didn't like to get out of their comfort zone. But when I did, I really got into it. Like, obsessively into it. It has followed me way into adulthood, and I think one of the many contributing factors, and I don't believe I'm alone in this, was Pokemon Mystery Dungeon as a series. Specifically, really just Red Blue Rescue Team and Explorers of Time, Darkness, or Spawn. I'm going to interrupt myself really quick and ask if you would like, comment below what got you into Pokemon or what drove you away from it if you're not so keen on it. Like the video and subscribe if you'd like. It helps me out when you interact with the video. Speaking of which, in case you aren't aware of the series or have never played it, here's a synopsis of what I found on Wikipedia that I will read to you in the worst British voice you've ever heard. Pokemon Mystery Dungeon is a... oh my god. Pokemon Mystery Dungeon is a video game series spin-off from the main Pokemon series, developed by Spike Chunsoft, formerly Chunsoft. The games feature the fictional creatures called Pokemon who have the ability to speak human language, navigating through a randomly generated dungeon using turn-based moves, common to Mystery Dungeon games. The player assumes the role of a Pokemon that was transformed from a human, found by a player's Pokemon partner in the start of the game. Before the game starts, the player will need to go through a personality test. This will decide which Pokemon the player is in the game. The game starts with one partner Pokemon, but the player can recruit other Pokemon that they meet in the dungeon into their team soon after the first mission. Really channeled my Sea-Dog VA there. The series really was one of those things that just made me feel like it was different from other Pokemon media. The appeal was that you turned into some powerful creature one day and you become friends, what feels mostly organically, with other Pokemon who you can actually talk to, which at the time, the case of Pokemon being able to talk was a special occasion only shown in movies or something. So basically it was every neurodivergent furry's dream come true. So what makes this series so great? What sets it apart? Well, personally, this really is all my experience, and my feelings on the game may not translate to what you desire in a video game, especially a nearly 20-year-old one meant for children at the time. I do, however, have to sing its praises and its merits because its actual vibe as a game series alone is different. It feels free. It's very articulate in its language and portrays the expression of the characters included a lot more than the mainstay Pokemon games. Turns out having expression icons and actual speaking lines beyond yes and no may end up feeling less hollow and may immerse you better as a main character. In the same ballpark, I love how the series treats you, the player, especially when you put into perspective the actual rating is E for everyone, targeted toward children who just love Pokemon. The series doesn't treat you like a child in most games. I'd say the most childish part about it is the very light consequences of the actions we take in the game, mainly a slap on the wrist and taking items and money, or a moment of being mean only to be met with the same response as we would get if we instead comforted someone. But they really don't hold back on more adult topics, like the obvious topic of predators and stranger danger, existentialism, and the idea of being completely exiled from everyone you know and love who in that moment are searching to kill you, and of course the permanence of death and what it means to no longer exist. Yes, these are real things they talk about in these games. I have more of a bias towards Explorers rather than Rescue Team, both of which are great games, but I have a more intimate experience with Explorers, especially when it comes to Sky. The story of these games usually carry, but I don't feel like any story beats Magic Explorers of Sky, not to mention the beefed up additional post-game content that adds about like 10 plus hours to an 18-hour game, and the massive amount of side stories of other characters that they provide to you. I've had moments during these stories that still make me cry. No matter how many times I watch this scene, the floodgates in my eyes release, this music has a Pavlov effect. Blue and Red also have amazing story qualities and sometimes even more manageable game mechanics, though with tiny things here and there, like items held not counting towards items in your bag. I'd also say Red and Blue is slightly harder, typically with it being the first edition of the series and offers a challenge to those unknowing of what's to come in the story beats. The exile mob thing is a looming threat and happens quite suddenly, leaving you very little time to prepare. You'll probably manage, but it's something that I feel like someone without much items in their storage would struggle with. You know, like a child. Both final dungeons are also stupidly tough, although I argue the extra fight with Dusknoir is even tougher, considering it's like a 3-on-9 fight against a bunch of really annoying Sableye, and you can only carry so many Reviver Seeds. And of course, Primal Dialga's theme slaps. Actually, all the music in every game slaps. Another thing I love about this series as a whole is it plays with the Pokemon world a lot. Throwaway Pokedex entries are suddenly relevant plot points, and like, sign me up for that. Sign me up, I love that. We talk about Ninetales and possibly long lifespan and cursed folklore. That's a plot point. That's a big plot point, actually. Uxie's memory wipe, Celebi's time travel, Gardevoir's protectiveness and psychic ability, Exactly being a fortune teller, Grovile's extreme agility and speed, Diglett. It's also rich with personality, perfectly imbued into the story, as if these entries were literally made for it. And while Pokemon has done this before in its main games, it's often not explored to this extent with more ordinary Pokemon. Usually it's only pertaining to the box legendary or the DLC legendary of that game, plus whoever tends to be linked to the story at the time can have their Pokemon somewhat relevant, I guess. The bigger roles I can think of are Zoroark and Mabostiff respectively. Can we also talk about the personality test in the DS versions? The immersion is there from the get-go, and the tests stand to be one of my favorite opening pieces in these games. Just asking you, the player, your answers to these seemingly silly questions puts you in a position of revealing yourself to the game and having your assigned Pokemon thrust upon you. On top of that, it made me feel so weirdly special as a kid and immersed me amazingly well by adding the touch feature. I loved seeing my aura, and it made it really believable by making it the same color most times, though I believe it's because of the DS's GUI color. Obviously everyone cheats and looks up guides to make sure that they are their favorite, who hasn't, but I can't help but love my government-assigned Pokesona, honestly. I got Pikachu the first time, and Torchic the second time, which is kind of funny because those two correlate with hasty and rash answers to the personality quiz, and it really stands that I now get more Vulpix or Cyndaquil, which are relaxed and calm answers when I answered them honestly. What else is there to say about Pokemon Mystery Dungeon beyond this point? I could talk about all of it, extensively, for hours. But that would mean I use up your time and mine talking about these games alone, and while I'd love to do that, I simply struggle with keeping things coherent, and drawing things to fill that would take so long it's not even funny. You wouldn't see me for years. So instead, I'll end it with this. This game series is pretty solid, no matter where you start, and while I only covered the ones I'm familiar with, which are the first two editions, I've seen nothing from other people's expressed opinions that say any of the others are lacking whatsoever. So I recommend, to the highest degree, pick up your Switch and play Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Red Rescue Team. And I hope it's a gateway to a truly enjoyable game series for you. It absolutely was for me. Mystery Dungeon is a silly little series that I can't help but have the utmost nostalgia for, and honestly I'm kinda glad I've seen some people share the sentiment since the announcement. It feels really nice to know people share that same love for a somewhat niche series like this. By the way, if you made it this far, I want you guys to know you can now support me on Ko-Fi, or Ko-Fi, I don't know how it's pronounced, so I can kinda get a bit of something together to make these videos better. It's more of a tip jar right now, but I may add tiers later. So that's a way to support your professional talking rabbit. Thanks for visiting the burrow.